Let's get into the first intellectual discussion tonight and talk about the relationship of circus to sideshow. I sometimes like to think that circus and sideshow were brother and sister, and sideshow is the weird little brother of the glamorous big sister. What is the difference between the two? And do they have to be juxtaposed against each other, or do they exist separately as well as together?
Traditionally, most traveling circuses had a sideshow, and it was literally the side show. So the circus was a big tent, and the sideshow was a smaller tent that was off to the side, hence the sideshow. And it was in the sideshow that they had kind of the weird, the strange, the bizarre, the macabre. It wasn't the glossy, big circus acts that that circus had been known to the trapeze artists. This, literally, like this, it was kind of the ugly cousin. This had the freaks in it. And, over the course of time, these sideshows really kind of faded out of the circuses. It was in the 70s, I think, was the last time that Ringling had a sideshow at Madison Square Garden as part of their circus. I think it was in the mid-70s or so. So, the sideshows at that point, even before that, really started to sort of fade into oblivion until, I think, like the 90s, where it was sort of a resurgence of it.
For freaks, we actually think long and hard about what we do because we're Brooklyn freaks. Stephanie has just returned from Washington, D.C., where she participated in the Smithsonian Institution Circus Folk Life event with the National Endowment for the Arts. And preparing for this talk, you made a point of saying you've been doing some thinking of the relationship of circus and sideshow. So what's on your mind?
It's interesting to note the legitimacy of circus as an art form, which is growing in the United States. Ever since the late 90s, when Cirque du Soleil began to become a seed in the American consciousness of this intensely theatrical, very upscale, expensive experience that completely took the sawdust and the elephant poop out of the experience and elevated this into a theatrical art in our American cultural imagination. Leaving the sideshow behind, leaving the messiness behind, the mud lots, all of that stuff. Sideshow is inextricably a part of circus.
They'll pick a singer or I don't even know why, but the variety arts are as mainstream as they might be on network television, they're still not held in high regard.
So during the week, in the first week of July, I was invited to the National Endowment for the Arts to speak on a panel before the NEA about why circus is an art form. And what lots of people don't know is that circus and sideshow and variety and vaudeville all have roots that go, like many of you probably know this, but not everybody else does. Roots that go deep into prehistoric culture, prehistoric ways of being together as a society. Theater, circus, these things kind of predate writing about art or talking about art. They were this necessary ritualistic components of what held a society together that have evolved over time and become decorated with spangles and sparkles and bright lights. But this is a very critical part of what can make our culture stronger, is that we can share an appreciation for human talent, human courage, human development, human aspiration. The circus does that, and the sideshow does that. And it also kind of frightens us a little bit and reminds us that we are human, that death is imminent and life is scary, but that's okay. Like, that's what art is supposed to do. And these are things that we're not taught in school. We're taught about ballet, we're taught about opera, we're taught about great legitimate theater. So the task is it's amazing that you're all here and that we get to talk about this. The task is for us to find more ways to talk about this. I teach, I work with kids. I make sure I teach the history of what I'm doing, why I love what I'm doing, because it has deep roots.
So both of you are educators. Adam actually is an official teacher.
Yeah.
Adam is the Dean of Sideshow School. Stephanie is the program called the Cavalcade of Youth, or that's just the showcase?
There are two different aspects. There's a program called the Circus After School, which is a social circus program for kids in Columbia County, New York. And the Cavalcade of Youth is a professional development program for kids who are interested in careers in circus and ballet.
So I know all three of us are obsessed with teaching safety. When you get into sideshow skills in particular, is a niche of the circus arts. Everything is dangerous. And there is an obsession to pass on a way of behavior, a way of performing to do dangerous things as safely as possible. And I know the two of you believe in that as strongly as I do. But because of, especially the TV show America's Got Talent, there's suddenly a one-upsmanship. The best way for a young person starting out in the sideshow arts, somebody in their 20s, to make a name for themselves is to push the envelope and go farther than somebody else has done. So once we started doing sideshow school and doing sideshows, then somebody comes along, and while a sword is inside of him still swallowed, this individual laid on a bed of nails and had somebody break a cinder block with a sledgehammer while they were doing bed of nails. Dangerous? Yeah. Am I happy about that? No. But then after somebody does that, 2 years later, somebody else comes along and decides with the sword inside of him, he's going to break dance on the floor, or he's going to swallow a sword and not under control. The sword's going to be attached to a chain. The other end of the chain is going to be attached to eye hooks that somebody else in the company. And the person with the eye hooks is going to get that sword out of the sword swallower's throat, not a controlled removal. And then, 2 years later on America's Got Talent, there is an acrobat who swallows a sword and does a backflip with the sword inside of them. How do we stop this one-upmanship that ultimately ends up not in the freak accident some of you might have seen last year where a flaming sword trick goes wrong and on TV hits somebody in the neck and actually hurts them? But how close are we to somebody dying on that TV show? And what do we do about it as proponents of sideshow?
The only way that it's going to stop is when someone dies. And it's going to be a result of these TV shows. And that's really because these shows allow performers to keep pushing the envelope. I mean, call me old-fashioned, but I swallow a sword, and that's all you get. I'm not doing backflips, I'm not doing anything else. And, it's just simple in that if you've never seen a sword swallower, just watching a sword swallower is amazing. So why am I going to now flare it up? To me, I'm not going to put myself at risk. Sorry.
I have to play devil's advocate.
Sitting right here in the front there. That's the splash zone. See if you can guess what I had for lunch. Okay, here we go. First story. But judging from that lukewarm round of applause, I think this graphic starting size looks a little bit more dangerous.
Yeah.
I think you are, and I think I can accommodate you now with a slightly bigger sword. It's a little bit bigger, a little bit wider, which equals a little bit more danger. That's right. But not content with just this bigger tool. Oh no. I like to take the danger level and kick it right up to the roof. And there's only one way that I can do that, and that is by using someone from our audience to assist me. You're sitting right up front. Give her a round of applause. Come on, right over here. I promise you won't hurt you at all. All right, now what was your name? Anea. Hi, Anea. All right, I got one question for you. How can you get following directions? Okay, excellent. Anea, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to swallow this sword. You are going to pull it out after it's now let's go over it. This way we know you're not going to mess up. You can handle it, I promise. It's not that bad. Alright? I'll swallow the sword, lean forward towards everybody. As soon as I get here, you put your hand on the sword. Hand on the sword, straight back. Pull, don't push. That's all you need to know. Pull, don't twist. Pull, don't wait. You can wiggle, just don't wiggle this way. You ready today? You can do this, I promise you. When you do it, I squeeze it, I'll leave it back down. All you have to do is put your hand on it, and I'll back up. Alright? And of course, after Renee successfully completes this task, that round of applause is going to be for you. Okay, here we go. Totally cool. But now, my friends, what you've just seen is an attempt at the most dangerous act that I do. Trust me, Nate, to pull it out. She did a good job starting it out for me. I finished it off. What you're going to see right now is the most dangerous sword that I saw. 27.5 inches of solid Spanish steel. Now let me ask you this question here. Do we have any doctors, nurses, EMTs, medical professionals in our audience this evening? No one that wants to work. I understand. Okay, that's all right. That's okay. You're going to have to trust me now when I tell you the path that the swords take as they go into my body. The sword goes into my mouth, into my throat. There's a little trap door right around here that separates the digestive tract where your food goes and the respiratory tract. How you breathe, that trap door is called the epiglottis. Then the epiglottis opens up and allows the sword to go all the way down the food tube into the esophagus, stopping right around here where there's another little trap door called the sphincter. This one, not that one. This sphincter opens up, and because of the length of the sword, the point of the sword is going to touch the bottom of my stomach, approximately right over here. Now, at any point during the act, if I were to drop that sword with any amount of force, I cause a puncture in the stomach, causing internal bleeding, dying right before your very eyes. And while some of you might want to see that, I've got a busy summer ahead. Can't afford that. Of course, I continue thrusting the sword down under my pants. It ain't that kind of show, folks. This is about Circus and Sideshow, not more or less. So, friends, right now, let's see if I can get 27.5 inches of solid steel down the hatch without a scratch. No, because this is the most dangerous sword that I saw. The dangers are real. The sword goes right past the heart. The lungs region. I'm going to take my applause before I swallow it, just in case it doesn't go as planned. I want to go with a smile on my face. Let me hear you, friends. I'm just warming things up here because Stephanie is going to be coming up in just a second, and let me tell you, this here is a firecracker, man. So,
I just want to say, Coney Island traditionally is an immigrant community where the most recent arrivals to New York City, different ethnically from different countries, people come for entertainment. They don't necessarily speak English, but every 5 minutes if somebody eats fire or hammers a nail in their head, you've been entertained, not like on Broadway where you sit in the dark and intellectually think about something in silence. You have visceral entertainment that makes you applaud, scream, throw up, vomit, or just be afraid. So a traditional sideshow gives you 10 different acts, a 10 in one circus sideshow. We're giving you 10 tubes a night. Stephanie, just by the sound of her act, is potentially going to scare you, but understand she's not out to hurt you, just to entertain.
Yeah, I remember what I said about breaking the sound barrier. Every little crack of the whip is just this little piece of string moving faster than the speed of sound. So as you can imagine, anything in the way is going to suffer a little damage. Contrary to popular opinion or belief, whips was never designed to strike animals or people. They're used as sound signaling devices, primarily with people who work with large groups of animals like cattle or sheep. But in the circus, in the sideshow, in the rodeo, the whip has become a very fancy entertainment device. Because that loud cracking sound also can cut like a surgeon's knife. I don't know, I thought maybe we'd bring a little danger into tonight's experience. I need to volunteer. Wow. No. You're a little too eager. Plus, I'm afraid you might be a lawyer. All right, why not? Come on up. Hello, what's your name? Hi, Mark. Come on over here. I'm going to bring you into the light. Yeah, this is probably the best place. Mark, these are your new friends and bands. It is very relaxed and casual for your evening out, but I do have a little accessory for you, Mark. I'm going to ask you to hold this flower in your left hand, extend it towards the lovely front row there. Mark, I'm going to be over here. I'm going to slip the whip through the air. You'll hear a terrible whistling sound as it gathers speed. Hopefully your fingers are still wherever. I don't know about you, but I have a feeling that this audience wants to see a little more danger in tonight's presentation. Fabulous. Mark, you're going to take this rose
face the back wall here. Say hello to Adam and to Dick, our tremendous moderator. Alright, so now we're going to do a little stretching exercise, Mark. You're going to reach up with the rows, open your feet about shoulder width, take a deep breath in. And on the exhale, you're going to bend over and reach through your knees and hold. I like to call this one the Ring Mistress's Deadly Booty Crack. You look great, Mark. Hold that nice and high. Here we go. I'm going to do it for everybody. Sneak whip through the air. Let our toes slip down together. Speed it. Hopefully everything is where it was when we started. Hey, Mark, there's just one more thing here. You know, as I looked around this room of beautiful people, I said to myself, that guy, great smile. So Mark. You know where this is going, right? I'm feeling lucky today. Love me. Love something else? Sorry? No, don't worry. I'm a professional. There between the toppers, hands behind your back, Mark, and forward to reach your feet shoulder width. Get nice and comfortable. I'll be over here. I'll swing the whip through the air. Yeah.